Hey there. Let's jump into a super fun story that's going to grab your attention and not let go. Picture this, it's a bright, sunny Saturday afternoon. The sky is blue, the birds are chirping, and the air smells like fresh grass. In a little neighborhood, there's a boy named Timmy Jackson. He's 12 years old, skinny as a stick, and a little shy. Right now, he's out in his driveway, bouncing a basketball. Thump thump, thump thump. The sound echoes all around the quiet street. Timmy loves basketball. He's dribbling the ball like he's in the last game of the championships, pretending he's a superstar about to win it all. His sneakers squeak on the concrete, and his eyes are focused. To him, this isn't just playing, it's everything. Timmy's not a loud kid. He's not the type to yell or make trouble. He's just a regular boy who likes shooting hoops in his own driveway. The driveway is right in front of his house, a small white one with a red door. It's a nice little spot in a cul-de-sac, a street that ends in a circle where all the houses face each other. Most of the neighbors like Timmy. When they walk by, they wave at him. "Hey, Timmy," they say with big smiles. "Nice shot." Sometimes they even stop to watch him play for a minute. There's Mr. Carter, who lives 2 houses down. He's old and has a gray beard, but he always gives Timmy a thumbs up. Then there's Mrs. Lopez, who brings her little dog out and claps when Timmy makes a basket. Most folks around here are friendly. Most folks, except her. Her name is Karen Watkins. She's not like the other neighbors. Nope, not even close. Karen lives right across the street from Timmy's house. Her house is big and fancy, with perfect green grass and flowers that never seem to wilt. She's the boss of the HOA, that's the group that makes rules for the neighborhood. Karen loves rules. She carries a clipboard everywhere, like it's glued to her hand. She's always writing stuff down, checking things, and telling people what to do. Her hair is always tied up tight, and her glasses sit low on her nose so she can glare over them. To Karen, everything has to be perfect. And Timmy's basketball game? To her, it's not a game at all. It's a problem. A big, noisy, messy problem. She thinks it's like a crime scene waiting to happen. See, every time Timmy plays, Karen watches from her window. Her curtains twitch, and you can just tell she's mad. That thump-thump of the ball drives her crazy. She doesn't see a kid having fun. She sees a rule being broken. She sees a boy who's ruining her perfect little world. Basketballs don't belong in driveways, she'd mutter to herself. This is a nice neighborhood, not a playground. Karen's the kind of person who thinks she owns the whole street. If a leaf falls on your lawn, she's there with her clipboard, telling you to pick it up. If your trash can is out too long, she's knocking on your door. And Timmy bouncing his ball? Oh, that's the worst thing of all to her. But here's the thing, something super important you need to know. Karen has a secret. A big, huge, giant secret. It's something she's been hiding for a long time. She thinks no one knows. She thinks she's safe. She's sure she's buried it deep, like treasure under the ground. But she's wrong. That basketball Timmy's bouncing? That thump-thump sound? It's not just a game. It's like a drum beat counting down to something big. Something that's going to turn everything upside down. Karen doesn't know it yet, but Timmy's ball is about to bounce her secret right out into the open. It's going to crash through her perfect little life like a wrecking ball. And when it does, oh boy, you're not going to believe what happens next. So, let's pause for a second. I've got a question for you. Have you ever had a neighbor like Karen? Someone who acts like they're in charge of everything? Maybe they complain about your bike or your dog or even the way you mow your grass. Tell me about it down below. I bet some of you have stories just as wild as this one. While you're at it, if you like fun stories like this, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Because trust me, this is just the start. Now, let's zoom in a little more. Timmy's out there on that sunny day, and the cul-de-sac is super quiet except for that ball. Thump thump. It's a peaceful place, really. The houses are all different colors. Timmy's is white, Mr. Carter's is yellow, Mrs. Lopez's is blue. There's a big tree in the middle of the circle where kids sometimes climb. Birds are singing, and a soft breeze is blowing. It's the kind of day that feels perfect for playing outside. Timmy's wearing his favorite red sneakers and a t-shirt with a basketball logo on it. His brown hair is messy from running around, and he's got a little sweat on his forehead. He's happy. This is his spot, his game, his fun. Across the street, Karen's house looks like it's out of a magazine. The windows sparkle, the bushes are trimmed just right, and there's not a speck of dirt anywhere. She's got a sign in her yard that says HOA President in big, bold letters. Karen takes that job seriously. She's always walking around the neighborhood, looking for trouble. If someone parks their car a little crooked, she's there with a note. If a kid leaves a toy outside, she's knocking on doors. To her, the neighborhood is like her kingdom, and she's the queen. And Timmy? He's like a little rebel she can't control. Timmy doesn't even think about Karen most of the time. He's too busy playing. Right now, he's pretending he's in a big game. 5 seconds left, he whispers to himself. Thump thump. He dribbles past the defender. He spins around an imaginary player. 3, 2, 1 he shoots. The ball sails through the air and swish right into the hoop. It's just a little hoop his mom, Lisa, put up on a pole in the driveway. It's not fancy, but to Timmy, it's the best thing ever. He pumps his fist and grins. Yes. Game over, he says, even though he's the only one playing. But while Timmy's celebrating, Karen's watching. She's standing at her window, arms crossed, her lips pressed into a thin line. That thump thump is like nails on a chalkboard to her. She hates it. She hates the noise, the mess, the idea of a kid doing whatever he wants. To her, it's not just a basketball, it's a war. A war she's determined to win. She's been watching Timmy for weeks now, every Saturday, every bounce. And she's had enough. She's got her phone in one hand and her clipboard in the other, ready to do something about it. She doesn't know it yet, but she's about to make a big mistake. Let's talk about Timmy's mom for a second. Her name's Lisa, and she's super nice. She's got curly hair and a big smile, and she's always telling Timmy to have fun. She's the one who bought him the basketball hoop. Go play, kiddo, she'd say. It's good to be outside. Lisa works at a store downtown, and she's busy a lot, but she loves seeing Timmy happy. She knows Karen doesn't like the hoop, but she doesn't care too much. It's just a kid playing, she'd tell herself. Lisa's not the type to fight with neighbors. She just wants peace. But peace isn't what Karen wants. Karen's secret? It's still hiding right now. No one in the neighborhood has a clue, not Timmy, not Lisa, not Mr. Carter or Mrs. Lopez. It's locked up tight in Karen's head, and she thinks it's safe. She thinks she's so smart, so in control. She's wrong, though. That secret's like a balloon getting bigger and bigger, ready to pop. And Timmy's basketball? It's the pin that's going to poke it. Every thump thump is pushing it closer to bursting. Karen doesn't see it coming, but we do. And that's what makes this so exciting. Let's paint the picture a little more. The cul-de-sac has 8 houses total, all in that circle. Timmy's house is number 5, right in the middle. Karen's is number 2, straight across. The street is wide enough for kids to ride bikes, and there's a sidewalk that loops around. On this Saturday, it's quiet except for Timmy. No cars, no loud noises, just that ball. Thump thump. The sun's high in the sky, making everything bright and warm. Timmy's shadow stretches across the driveway as he moves. He's lost in his game, not thinking about anything else. Karen, though. She's thinking a lot. She's standing there, staring out her big front window. Her house is dark inside, all the lights are off, like she's hiding. She's wearing a green shirt and jeans, but she looks stiff, like she's always ready to march out and yell. Her clipboard's on the table next to her, covered in papers and notes. She's got rules written down, rules about noise, rules about toys, rules about everything. And to her, Timmy's breaking them all. She taps her foot, fast and angry. Thump thump. She can't take it anymore. Timmy doesn't see her watching. He's too busy. He grabs the ball after a shot and starts again. New game, he says to himself. Thump thump. He's imagining a crowd now, cheering for him. Timmy Jackson takes the lead, he whispers. He doesn't know Karen's about to do something big. He doesn't know she's reaching for her phone. He doesn't know her secret's about to spill out like water from a broken bucket. But we know. And that's why we're sticking around. So, let's check in again. Have you ever had a neighbor who acts like they're the boss of everyone? Maybe they tell you what to do or complain all the time. Drop your stories below, I want to hear them. This neighborhood's about to get wild, and I bet some of you have seen stuff just as crazy. Keep reading, because Timmy's basketball is only the beginning. Let's stretch this out a bit more. Timmy's been playing for an hour now. The sun's still shining, and he's not tired yet. His red sneakers are getting dusty from all the running. The hoop wobbles a little every time the ball hits it. It's old, but it works. Lisa's inside the house, making lunch. She can hear the thump-thump through the open window, and it makes her smile. She's proud of Timmy. He's not the loudest kid, not the strongest, but he's got heart. He keeps going, no matter what. Across the street, Karen's still at her window. She's been there so long her legs are starting to ache, but she won't sit down. She's too mad. That sound thump-thump, it's like a hammer in her brain. She's thinking about all the times she's told Timmy to stop. She's left notes on his door. No noise after 5 p.m., one said. Driveways are for cars, not games, said another. Lisa always threw them away, but Karen kept writing. She thought she could scare them into listening. She thought she was in charge. Timmy's not scared, though. He's shy, sure, but he's not afraid of Karen. He just likes his basketball too much. Right now, he's dribbling with one hand, then the other. Thump thump. He's getting better every day. Last week, he could only make 1 shot out of 5. Now it's 3 out of 5. He's proud of that. He doesn't know Karen's watching every move. He doesn't know she's about to snap. Karen's secret is still a mystery to us, but let's drop a tiny hint. It's something she did a while ago, something sneaky. She thinks no one will ever find out. She's been so careful, so quiet about it. But secrets don't stay hidden forever, do they? Especially not when a kid with a basketball is around. That thump-thump is like a clock ticking. Every bounce is a second closer to the truth coming out. Karen doesn't hear the ticking. She just hears noise she hates. Let's imagine the neighborhood a little more. Mr. Carter's outside now, watering his plants. He's got a hose in his hand, and he's humming a song. He looks over at Timmy and waves. Keep it up, kid, he calls. Mrs. Lopez's dog barks from her porch, a little yip-yip sound. It's a normal day, a happy day. Except for Karen. She's the dark cloud in this sunny picture. She's the one who's about to stir up trouble. Timmy's ball bounces high this time. Thump thump. It almost hits the garage door, but he catches it just in time. Whoa, he laughs. He's having the best day. He doesn't know Karen's dialing her phone right now. He doesn't know she's about to call someone big. He doesn't know her secret's about to explode. But we do. And that's what makes this so fun. Let's keep going. The cul-de-sac is still quiet, but there's a feeling in the air like something's coming. Timmy's dribbling faster now. Thump thump thump. He's pretending he's in overtime. Gotta win it, he says. His voice is soft, but he's excited. The ball spins in his hands, and he shoots again. Swish. Another basket. He's on a roll. Karen's done watching. She's had it. She grabs her phone and stomps to her front door. She's going to end this, she thinks. She's going to stop that noise once and for all. She doesn't know she's walking right into her own trap. She doesn't know the thump-thump is about to bounce back on her. But we know. And we're here for it. So, one more time, have you ever had a neighbor like Karen? Someone who thinks they're the king or queen of the street? Tell me below. This story's just getting started, and trust me, you're going to love where it goes. Timmy's basketball is about to change everything. Ready for more? Let's keep bouncing along. Alright, let's dive back into this crazy story. Things are about to heat up in the cul-de-sac, and it's all because of Karen Watkins and her big, loud complaints. Karen wasn't the type to stay quiet when she didn't like something. Oh no, she was bold and bossy, and she made sure everyone knew it. Every time Timmy Jackson bounced his basketball in the driveway, Karen would come stomping over. She'd march across the street like she was on a mission, her phone in one hand, snapping pictures of Timmy's little hoop. Click, click, click. She held that phone up like it was a detective's camera, collecting evidence for a big courtroom case. "Look at this," she'd shout, pointing at the hoop like it was a monster. "This is against the rules." Her voice was loud and sharp enough to cut glass. Really? It wasn't soft or nice. It was mean and angry, and it made Timmy's ears hurt a little. "I've had enough of this noise," she'd yell. "That ball bouncing all day, it's ruining everything. I'm calling 911 if you don't stop right now." She'd wave her phone around like it was a magic wand, ready to make Timmy disappear. She didn't care that he was just a kid. To her, that thump-thump of the basketball was the worst sound in the world. She wanted it gone, and she wanted it gone fast. Timmy's mom, Lisa, was totally different. She was calm and kind, even when Karen got all loud and crazy. Lisa would step out onto the porch, her curly hair bouncing a little, and try to talk to Karen. "Hey, it's just a kid playing," she'd say, keeping her voice soft. "He's not hurting anyone." Lisa didn't want a fight. She just wanted Timmy to have fun. She'd stand there in her jeans and t-shirt, arms crossed, hoping Karen would chill out. But Karen? She didn't chill. Not even a little. She'd huff like a big, annoyed puff of air and puff some more. "Property values," she'd snap, like that explained everything. "This noise is bringing down the whole neighborhood. That boy's a disrespectful brat." Then she'd turn around and stomp back to her house, her shoe slapping the pavement hard. Timmy, though. He didn't let Karen stop him. Nope, not one bit. He kept dribbling his basketball, nice and quiet. Thump thump, thump thump. Every bounce was like a little no to Karen. He wasn't loud about it, he didn't yell back or argue. Timmy was shy, remember? He wasn't the type to shout. But he wasn't going to give up his game either. That ball in his hands. It was his way of saying, "I'm still here." It was his tiny rebellion, even if he didn't call it that. He'd bounce it slow and steady, right there in the driveway, while Karen glared from across the street. He didn't say much, but he didn't have to. The thump-thump said it all. Karen kept coming over, though. Day after day, she'd march up with that phone and that clipboard of hers. "I'm warning you," she'd holler. "This isn't allowed. I'm the HOA president, and I make the rules." She'd take more pictures, click, click, and scribble stuff on her papers. She'd point at the hoop and shake her head, her glasses slipping down her nose. "This is a disgrace," she'd say. "A total disgrace." Then she'd storm off again, muttering under her breath about how Timmy was ruining everything. She'd go back to her fancy house, slam the door, and peek out her window to see if he'd stopped. But he never did. Thump thump. That sound kept going, and it drove her nuts. Lisa tried to talk to her a bunch of times. "Karen, come on," she'd say, standing on the driveway with her hands on her hips. "He's 12. It's just a basketball. What's the big deal?" But Karen wouldn't listen. She'd cut Lisa off and start yelling again. "The big deal is the noise," she'd bark. "The big deal is the mess. The big deal is that kids like him don't belong here making trouble." Lisa would sigh and shake her head. She didn't get why Karen was so mad. To her, it was simple: Timmy was a kid, and kids play. That's it. But to Karen, it was war. Timmy watched all of this. He didn't say much, but he saw everything. He'd bounce his ball and peek over at Karen while she yelled. He noticed how her face got redder every day. At first, it was just a little pink when she got mad. Then it turned bright red, like a tomato. By now, it was practically purple when she shouted. He could see the steam coming off her, like she was a teapot about to whistle. He didn't laugh, though he was too shy for that. He just kept dribbling and watching. Thump thump. He saw how she'd stomp away after every fight, her shoulders all hunched up. He saw how she'd glare at him from her window, her eyes like little lasers. She thought he didn't notice, but he did. And here's where it gets interesting. Timmy started to see something weird about Karen. Something really strange. Every time a car drove by the cul-de-sac, Karen would stop what she was doing. She'd freeze, like a statue, and peek out her blinds. She'd pull them apart just a tiny bit with her fingers and stare at the street. Her face wasn't mad then, it was different. It was tight and worried, like she was waiting for something bad. Timmy saw it happen once, then twice, then a bunch of times. If a truck rumbled past, vroom, there she was at the window. If a neighbor drove home, beep beep, she'd peek again. It was like she was scared of every car that came near. Timmy didn't know why she did that. He was just a kid, after all. But he thought it was odd. Why's she so jumpy, he'd wonder while he bounced his ball. Thump thump. He didn't ask his mom about it, he was too shy to bring it up. But he kept it in his head. He'd dribble and watch. Karen didn't know he was paying attention. She thought he was just some dumb kid with a ball. She didn't think he could see through her. But Timmy was quiet, not blind. And that quiet watching? It was going to matter a lot later. Karen kept up her complaints, though. She didn't stop. One day, she came over with a big piece of paper. It was a rule sheet from the HOA, all typed up nice and neat. She waved it in Lisa's face. "See this," she said, her voice loud and proud. "No sports equipment in driveways. It's right here, rule number 12. Your kid's breaking it?" Lisa took the paper and looked at it. She frowned a little. "This doesn't say basketballs," she said. "It says no skateboards or bikes parked in driveways." Karen blinked, then snatched the paper back. "Well, it's the same thing," she snapped. "It's all noise and trouble." Lisa just shrugged. "He's not parking anything," she said. "He's playing." Karen didn't like that answer. She turned red, really red, and huffed again. "You'll see," she said. "I'm going to fix this. I'll call the cops if I have to." Then she marched off, her clipboard bouncing in her hand. Lisa watched her go and shook her head. "She's nuts," she muttered. She went back inside to finish making dinner, leaving Timmy to his game. Thump thump. Karen didn't scare Lisa much. She figured it was just talk. But Karen wasn't kidding. She was serious. She was ready to make that call. Timmy kept playing, even after that big fight. He didn't stop for Karen or her rules or her yelling. Thump thump. He'd shoot the ball and watch it sail into the hoop. Swish. He'd smile a little, just to himself. He didn't need to say anything. The ball did the talking. But he kept watching Karen, too. He saw how she'd pace in her house after every argument. He saw how she'd peek out those blinds again and again. He didn't know what she was scared of, but he could tell it was something. Something big. Let's zoom in on one day, a super sunny one. The sky was bright blue, and the cul-de-sac was quiet, like always. Timmy was out there in his red sneakers, bouncing away. Thump thump. Lisa was inside, humming a song while she washed dishes. Karen. She was at her window, staring out like a hawk. She'd been extra mad that day. Timmy had been playing for 2 whole hours, and she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her phone and started dialing. Not 911, not yet, but someone else. "Hello," she said, her voice sharp. "Yes, this is Karen Watkins, HOA president. I need to report a problem." Timmy didn't hear her. He was too busy. Thump thump. But he glanced up and saw her at the window, talking fast. Her face was red again, and her free hand was waving around. He didn't know who she was calling, but he could tell she was mad. He kept dribbling, though. He wasn't going to stop. Not for her. Not for anyone. That ball was his, and the driveway was his spot. Karen could yell all she wanted, it wouldn't change that. Karen hung up the phone and smirked a little. She thought she'd won something. She thought her call was going to fix everything. She didn't know Timmy was watching her. She didn't know he'd seen her peek out the blinds again, right after a blue car drove by. She didn't know he was starting to wonder about her. Why's she so weird about cars, he thought. Thump thump. He didn't have an answer, but he kept it in his head. He was quiet, but he was smart. Days went by, and Karen got louder. She'd come over every afternoon now, yelling the same stuff. "Stop that noise," she'd shout. "I'm calling 911. I mean it." Lisa would come out and say, "It's fine, Karen. Relax." But Karen didn't relax. She'd huff and puff and storm off, every time. And Timmy? He'd keep bouncing. Thump thump. He didn't fight back with words. He fought back with that ball. Every bounce was like a little push against Karen's rules. Every thump was a no to her yelling. Karen didn't see it that way, though. To her, Timmy was just a brat. A noisy, annoying brat who wouldn't listen. She didn't think he was watching her. She didn't think he noticed anything. She was too busy being mad to see what he saw. But Timmy saw a lot. He saw her red face. He saw her stomping feet. He saw her peeking out those blinds, every single time a car went by. He didn't know why she was scared, but he knew she was. And that made him curious. Let's talk about one big moment. It was a Wednesday, and Timmy was playing after school. The sun was low, turning the sky orange. Thump thump. Karen came over again, madder than ever. "This is it," she yelled, holding up her phone. "I'm done warning you. I'm calling the cops right now." Lisa stepped out, wiping her hands on a towel. "Karen, come on," she said. "It's just a ball." Karen shook her head. "No. It's a disturbance. I'm reporting it." She started dialing, her fingers shaking a little. Timmy stopped dribbling for a second. He held the ball and looked at her. Her face was purple now, and her eyes were wild. He didn't say anything, he just watched. Then he started bouncing again. Thump thump. Karen glared at him, but he didn't stop. Lisa sighed and went back inside. "Do what you want," she said. Karen smirked and kept talking into her phone. "Yes, hello, police. I need help," she said. Timmy kept playing. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know Karen's call was going to change everything. But he knew something was off about her. He'd seen her peek out those blinds too many times. He'd seen her jump when a car horn honked. He didn't know her secret yet, but he could feel it like a storm coming. Thump thump. That ball was his way of waiting it out. And Karen? She was walking right into trouble, even if she didn't see it. So, that's where we're at. Karen's mad, Lisa's calm, and Timmy's watching. The tension's building, like a rubber band stretching tight. Something's going to snap soon, you can feel it. Karen thinks she's in control, but Timmy's quiet eyes are catching more than she knows. What do you think? Have you ever seen someone get mad like Karen? Tell me below. This story's about to get wild, so stick around. Alright, let's keep the story rolling, it's about to get really exciting. Days went by after all that yelling from Karen Watkins. Every day, she got a little braver, a little louder, a little meaner. She wasn't just complaining anymore, she was ready to do something big. Timmy Jackson kept playing his basketball in the driveway, bouncing it like nothing was wrong. Thump thump, thump thump. That sound still drove Karen crazy, but now she wasn't just stomping over with her clipboard or snapping pictures with her phone. Nope, she was done with warnings. She was ready to make her move, and oh boy, did she make it loud. It was one sunny afternoon, super bright, with fluffy clouds floating in the sky. Timmy was out there, as usual, dribbling his ball in his red sneakers. Thump thump. The cul-de-sac was quiet, just like always, except for that bounce. Lisa, Timmy's mom, was inside the house, folding clothes and humming a little song. The neighbors were doing their own stuff. Mr. Carter was trimming his bushes, Mrs. Lopez was walking her tiny dog. Everything felt normal. But Karen? She wasn't feeling normal. She was fed up. She'd had enough of that thump-thump echoing across the street. She was done talking. She was ready to act. So, here's what happened. Karen stepped out onto her big, fancy porch, the one with the perfect flowers and the HOA president sign in the yard. She had her phone in her hand, and she held it up high, like she was about to win a prize. She dialed 911, yep, the real police number, and she didn't care who heard her. She wanted everyone to know. She stood there, right out in the open, and started yelling into the phone. Her voice was loud, super loud, so the whole block could hear every word. "Hello? Yes, this is an emergency," she barked. "There's a disturbance here. A kid's making noise, and it's ruining this neighborhood." Timmy was mid-dribble when he heard her. Thump thump, and then he stopped. The ball slipped right out of his hands and rolled a little on the driveway. He froze, standing there with his mouth open, staring across the street. Karen was shouting so loud it echoed off the houses. "It's that basketball," she kept going. It's been days, weeks of this racket. I can't take it anymore. Send someone now. Timmy's heart beat fast. He didn't know what to do. He was just a kid, and now Karen was calling the cops on him? For bouncing a ball? His eyes got big, and he looked toward his house, hoping his mom would come out. Lisa heard it, too. She dropped the shirt she was folding and ran to the front door. She pushed it open so fast it banged against the wall. "What's going on?" she yelled, stepping onto the porch. She saw Karen across the street, phone to her ear, still shouting. Lisa's curly hair bounced as she hurried down the steps to the driveway. "Karen, what are you doing?" she called, her voice strong but worried. She stood next to Timmy and put her hand on his shoulder. "It's just a kid playing. You're calling 911 over this?" Lisa couldn't believe it. She looked at Timmy, then back at Karen, her eyes wide with shock. Karen didn't even look at Lisa. She just kept talking into the phone, waving her free hand around like she was directing traffic. "Yes, it's a disturbance," she said again. "I've warned them 100 times. They won't stop. I need help." She was so loud that the neighbors started peeking out. Mr. Carter put down his clippers and leaned over his fence. Mrs. Lopez's little dog barked, and she shushed it while staring from her window. Even the kids down the street stopped riding their bikes and looked over. Everyone was whispering now. "Did she really call the police?" they said to each other. Over a basketball. This was it, Karen's big moment. She thought she was finally going to win. Timmy picked up his ball and held it tight. Thump Thump was gone now, he wasn't bouncing it anymore. He stood there next to Lisa, watching Karen. His shy face was all confused. He didn't get why she hated him so much. He didn't get why she'd call the cops over something so small. Lisa squeezed his shoulder and whispered, "It's okay, buddy. She's being silly." But Timmy wasn't so sure. Karen looked serious, really serious. Her face was red, like always, and her glasses were slipping down her nose as she yelled. She thought she had all the power now. She thought the police would come and make Timmy stop forever. She was wrong, though. So wrong. Here's where it gets juicy, really, really good. While Karen was still ranting into her phone, something happened. A police car rolled up. It came slow and quiet, like a cat sneaking through the grass. Its tires crunched on the pavement, but it didn't have sirens or lights flashing. It just slid into the cul-de-sac, smooth and calm. Timmy saw it first. His big eyes got even bigger, and he pointed. "Mom, look," he whispered. Lisa turned and saw it, too. Her jaw dropped all the way down. The neighbors saw it next. Mr. Carter straightened up. Mrs. Lopez gasped and hugged her dog. Everyone froze, watching that car. Karen didn't notice at first. She was too busy yelling. "Yes, it's right now," she said into the phone. "You need to hurry." But then she heard the car door shut thud and she turned around. Her smirk grew huge, like she'd just won $1 million. She hung up the phone fast and pointed at Timmy, her finger shaking with excitement. "See," she crowed, her voice loud and proud. "I told you I'd get this handled. The police are here. You're done, kid." She stood there on her porch, arms crossed, looking like she was the queen of the world. She thought the cops were there for Timmy. She thought she'd called them, and they'd come to back her up. She was so sure of it. But then, oh, this is the best part, the cops didn't even look at Timmy. Not even a tiny glance. Two officers stepped out of the car. One was tall with a serious face, and the other was shorter with a notepad in his hand. They shut their doors, thud, thud, and started walking. Timmy held his breath. Lisa tightened her grip on his shoulder. Karen kept smirking, pointing at Timmy like he was a criminal in a movie. "That's him," she said. "That's the troublemaker." But the cops? They didn't stop at the driveway. They didn't turn toward Timmy or Lisa. They walked right past them, their boots clicking on the pavement. They headed straight for Karen's front door. Timmy's eyes got huge like saucers. Lisa's jaw dropped even lower, if that was possible. "What's going on?" she whispered. Karen's smirk started to fade. She blinked fast, her glasses slipping more. "Wait, what?" she said, her voice getting shaky. The tall cop stopped right in front of her porch steps and looked up at her. "Are you Karen Watkins?" he asked, his voice deep and calm. Karen's face went from red to white in a second. "Why yes," she stammered. "That's me." "Why?" The cop didn't smile. He just nodded. The shorter cop flipped open his notepad and started reading something. Timmy and Lisa stood there, frozen. The neighbors leaned closer to their windows. Mr. Carter's mouth opened a little. Mrs. Lopez's dog barked again, but she didn't shush it this time. Everyone wanted to know what was happening. Karen had called 911 about Timmy, right? So why were the cops at her door? Why weren't they talking to Timmy? Why did Karen look so nervous all of a sudden? It didn't make sense. Not yet. But it was about to. Let's slow this down a bit, because it's too good to rush. Karen was still on her porch, her phone dangling in her hand. She'd been so loud, so sure of herself, just a minute ago. Now she looked confused. Her big moment wasn't going the way she planned. The tall cop took a step closer, his boots loud on her perfect walkway. "We need to talk to you, ma'am," he said. Karen swallowed hard. "Talk to me," she said, her voice squeaky now. But I called you. It's about that kid." She pointed at Timmy again, but her hand was shaking. The cop didn't even turn his head. He kept his eyes on Karen. "This isn't about a kid," he said. "This is about you." Karen's eyes got wide. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Timmy tilted his head, still holding his ball. Lisa whispered, "Timmy, stay here," and took a step closer to hear better. The neighbors were all watching now. No one was pretending to hide it anymore. Something big was happening, and they could feel it. Karen tried to laugh, but it sounded weird, like a hiccup. "Me," she said. "That's silly. I'm the one who called. It's that basketball noise." She waved her hand toward Timmy again, but the cops didn't budge. The shorter one looked up from his notepad. "Ma'am, we've been looking for you," he said. "This isn't about a noise complaint." Karen's face went even whiter, like a ghost. Her phone slipped a little in her hand, and she grabbed it tighter. "Looking for me," she said, her voice tiny now. "Why?" Timmy watched all of this, his heart thumping, not from dribbling this time, but from wondering. He'd seen Karen peek out her blinds a lot, remember? Every time a car went by, she'd get jumpy. He'd thought it was weird, but he didn't know what it meant. Now, with the cops here, he started to think maybe it was important. Maybe that scared look he'd seen on her face wasn't just about cars. Maybe it was about something bigger. Thump thump, his heart was beating like his ball used to. Lisa was confused, too. She looked at Timmy, then at Karen, then at the cops. "What's this about?" she called out, loud enough for them to hear. The tall cop glanced at her for a second, but he didn't answer. He turned back to Karen. "Ma'am, can you step down here?" he said. Karen shook her head fast. No, this is a mistake," she said. "I called you about him." She pointed at Timmy one more time, but it didn't work. The cops weren't buying it. The shorter cop put his notepad away and pulled out a piece of paper. It looked official, with lots of words on it. "Karen Watkins," he said, reading it slow, "we've got some questions for you." Karen's knees wobbled a little. She grabbed the porch railing to stand up straight. "Questions," she said. "About what?" The tall cop took off his hat and looked at her hard. "We'll talk inside," he said. "Let's go." Karen's eyes darted around like she was looking for a way to run. But there was nowhere to go. Timmy and Lisa stayed in the driveway, watching. The neighbors were buzzing now. "What's she done?" Mr. Carter whispered to himself. "Is she in trouble?" Mrs. Lopez asked her dog, like it could answer. The kids on their bikes rode closer, trying to hear. Everyone could tell something was off. Karen had called the cops on Timmy, but now the cops were after her. It was like a big puzzle, and the pieces were starting to show up. Let's back up a tiny bit. Before the cops showed up, Karen had been so sure she was right. She'd stood on that porch, yelling into her phone, thinking she'd finally get Timmy in trouble. She'd pictured the police coming, telling him to stop, maybe even taking his ball away. She'd smirked to herself, imagining Lisa's face when it happened. She thought she was the boss, the HOA queen who could do anything. But now she wasn't smirking. Now she was scared. And Timmy? He was just standing there, holding his ball, watching it all unfold. The cops didn't rush her. They were calm, like they'd done this before. The tall one pointed at her door. "Open it," he said. Karen shook her head again. "No, this is wrong," she said. "I didn't do anything." But her voice was cracking, and her hands were shaking bad. The shorter cop stepped up. "We've got a warrant," he said, holding up that paper. "We're coming in." Karen's eyes got huge. "A warrant?" she squeaked. "For what?" Timmy didn't know what a warrant was, he was only 12. But he could tell it was serious. He looked at Lisa. "Mom, what's a warrant?" he whispered. Lisa bit her lip. "It means they're allowed to go in," she said. "It means she's in trouble." Timmy nodded slow, his brain spinning. Trouble? Karen. The lady who yelled at him all the time. He'd thought he was the one in trouble, but now it was flipped. He held his ball tighter and kept watching. The neighbors were going wild now, well, wild for quiet people. Mr. Carter walked to his gate, leaning on it. Mrs. Lopez stepped onto her porch, still holding her dog. The kids on bikes stopped riding and just stared. Everyone was whispering, guessing, wondering. "Did she steal something?" one kid said. "Maybe she broke a big rule," said another. No one knew yet, but they could feel it. Karen's big moment was turning into something else. Something she didn't want. Karen finally moved. She stepped down from her porch, slow and wobbly, like her legs didn't work right. "This is a mistake," she kept saying. "You've got the wrong person." The tall cop shook his head. "We don't," he said. He pointed at her door again. "Let's go." Karen fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking so much she dropped them. Clink. They hit the ground, and she bent down fast to grab them. The cops waited, patient but firm. Timmy watched her drop those keys, and he remembered something. All those times she'd peeked out her blinds, every car, every noise, she'd looked like this. Scared. Nervous. Like she was waiting for something bad. He hadn't known what it was then, but now he was starting to guess. Maybe it wasn't just about him. Maybe it wasn't about the ball at all. Thump thump his heart again. He looked at Lisa. "Mom, why's she so scared?" he asked. Lisa frowned. "I don't know, buddy," she said. "But we're about to find out." The cops followed Karen to her door. She got it open after a few tries, her hands still shaking. The tall one went in first, then the shorter one. Karen looked back at Timmy and Lisa one last time, her eyes big and wild. "This is your fault," she yelled, pointing at them. But it didn't sound strong anymore. It sounded desperate. Then she went inside, and the door shut behind them. Thud. Timmy and Lisa stood there, quiet. The neighbors didn't move either. The cul-de-sac was silent, no thump thump, no yelling, just the sound of a breeze. Everyone was waiting. What was Karen hiding? Why were the cops here for her? Timmy didn't know yet, but he could feel it. Something big was coming. Something that would flip this whole story upside down. And he was right. So, what do you think? Things are getting wild, huh? Have you ever seen someone call for help and end up in trouble instead? Tell me below. This story's heating up, and the next part's going to blow your mind. Stick around. Okay, guys, hold on tight. This is the part where everything explodes. We're at the big, wild moment in the story, and it's going to be so exciting you won't want to blink. Let's jump right in. The police were at Karen Watkins' house now, and things were about to get crazy. Timmy Jackson and his mom, Lisa, were still standing in their driveway across the street, watching it all happen. The neighbors were peeking out their windows and doors, to Mr. Carter, Mrs. Lopez, even the kids on their bikes. Everyone was quiet, waiting to see what was next. Karen had called 911 about Timmy's basketball, but the cops weren't here for him. Nope, they were here for her. And oh boy, was she in for a shock. The lead officer stepped up first. He was a tall guy, super tall like a tree, with a serious face. He had a no-nonsense stare, the kind that makes you stand up straight even if you're not in trouble. He looked right at Karen, who was still on her porch, her phone in her shaky hand. She'd just hung up from yelling at 911, thinking she'd won. Her smug grin, that mean, proud smile she always had, was still on her face. She thought the cops were her backup, ready to stop Timmy's thump once and for all. But that grin? It was about to disappear fast. The tall cop stopped at the bottom of her porch steps and stared up at her. "Ma'am," he said, his voice deep and calm, "are you Karen Watkins?" Karen blinked, her grin slipping a little. She didn't expect that question. "Why yes, that's me," she stammered, her words tripping over each other. She adjusted her glasses, pushing them up her nose, trying to look important. "What's this about?" she asked, her voice getting high and squeaky. She still thought this was about Timmy. She still thought she was in charge. But the cop didn't blink, not once. His eyes stayed locked on her, hard and steady, like he could see right through her. Then he dropped the bomb. "We've got a warrant for your arrest," he said, slow and clear. "Tax evasion, fraud, over $50,000 owed. You've been dodging us for months." Boom. Just like that, the whole street went silent. Dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the pavement. No birds chirping, no wind blowing, no nothing, just quiet. Timmy's big eyes got bigger. Lisa's mouth fell open again, like it couldn't stay shut. Mr. Carter dropped his garden hose, and water started spraying everywhere. Mrs. Lopez's little dog yipped once, then stopped. Even the kids on their bikes froze, their wheels still. Everyone was stunned. Arrest. Karen. For $50,000. What? Karen's face changed fast. That smug grin? Gone. Her skin turned ghost white, like all the color drained out of her. She looked like a sheet flapping on a clothesline, pale and shaky. "What?" she shrieked, her voice so loud it bounced off the houses. "This is a mistake." She took a step back, almost tripping over her own feet. Her glasses slid down her nose again, but she didn't fix them this time. She was too busy freaking out. "No, no, no," she yelled. "You've got the wrong person. I didn't do anything." But the tall cop didn't move. He just reached into his pocket and pulled out a pair of shiny silver handcuffs. Click. They were out, ready to go. Timmy stared, his basketball still in his hands. He didn't bounce it. Thump was gone for now. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Lisa whispered, "Timmy, did he say arrest?" Timmy nodded slow, his brain spinning. "Arrest. That's what cops did to bad guys, right? Like in the movies?" But Karen wasn't a bad guy, she was just the mean lady who yelled about his ball. Or was she? He looked at her, all white and shaky, and started to wonder. Maybe there was more to her than he thought. The shorter cop, the one with the notepad, stepped up next. He had that official paper in his hand, the one he'd shown her before. "Karen Watkins," he said, reading it loud so everyone could hear, "you're under arrest for tax evasion and fraud." He flipped the paper over and kept going. "You owe more than $50,000. You've been hiding it, and we've got proof." Karen shook her head so fast her hair came loose from its tight bun. "No," she screamed. "That's not true. I'm the HOA president. I don't steal." But the cuffs were already swinging in the tall cop's hand. Click click. They were open, waiting for her wrists. Here's where it gets wild, really wild. Turns out, Karen wasn't as perfect as she acted. All those HOA fines she'd been collecting? You know, the ones she made people pay for silly stuff like leaving a trash can out or parking wrong. She wasn't giving that money to the HOA. Nope. She was keeping it. Pocketing it, stuffing it away in her own bank account. She'd been doing it for months, maybe years, taking little bits here and there, thinking no one would notice. She'd write stuff down on her clipboard, make it look all official, but it was a lie. She was cooking the books, faking the numbers so she could keep the cash. Over $50,000 worth. That's a lot of money, like, enough to buy a car or a house or a million basketballs. Timmy didn't know what tax evasion meant, but he got the fraud part. It meant lying and stealing, right? He looked at Lisa. "Mom, did she take money?" he asked, his voice small. Lisa nodded, her eyes still on Karen. "Yeah, buddy," she said. "Sounds like she did something bad." Timmy's mouth made a little O shape. "Karen. Stealing. The lady who yelled about rules all the time. It didn't make sense, but it did. All those times she peeked out her blinds, scared of every car? Maybe she was hiding from this. Maybe she knew someone would catch her someday. Karen kept yelling. "This is wrong," she shouted. "I didn't steal anything. You can't do this." But the tall cop wasn't listening. He stepped up onto her porch, the cuffs ready. "Turn around, ma'am," he said, calm as ever. Karen backed up more, bumping into her door. "No," she cried. "I called you. You're here for that kid." She pointed at Timmy again, her finger shaking like a leaf in the wind. But the cop shook his head. "We weren't here for him," he said. "We were already coming for you." That's when it hit bam, like a lightning bolt. The cops hadn't come because of Karen's 911 call. Nope. They'd been watching her for weeks. Weeks. They knew about the money, the fraud, all of it. They'd been waiting for the right moment to show up. And Karen? She'd just made it super easy for them. By calling 911, she'd brought them right to her doorstep. She thought she was getting Timmy in trouble, but she'd accidentally turned herself in. How wild is that? Timmy's basketball game wasn't the problem, it was just the excuse she used to act tough while she hid from the law. And now, the law was here, staring her in the face. Timmy's eyes got so wide they almost popped out. "Mom," he whispered. She called the cops on herself. Lisa nodded, a little smile starting on her face. "Looks like it," she said. The neighbors were buzzing now. Mr. Carter laughed out loud, a big, deep laugh. "She did what?" he said. Mrs. Lopez hugged her dog tighter. "Oh my goodness," she gasped. The kids on their bikes started giggling. "She's in trouble," one yelled. The whole cul-de-sac was alive with noise again, not thump-thump, but whispers and laughs and shocked little shouts. Karen didn't laugh. She was panicking. The tall cop grabbed her arm, not hard, just firm, and turned her around. "Hands behind your back," he said. Karen wiggled, trying to pull away. "No, no, no," she cried. "This isn't fair." But the cuffs went on anyway. Click click. They snapped shut around her wrists, shiny and tight. She yanked her arms, but they didn't move. She was stuck. The shorter cop put his paper away and held her other arm. "Let's go," he said. Karen's face twisted up, and she started to cry big, loud sobs. "You can't do this," she wailed. "I'm innocent." Timmy watched, his ball still in his hands. He didn't feel bad for her, not really. She'd been so mean to him, yelling every day about his game. But he was still shocked. "She's going to jail?" he asked Lisa. Lisa shrugged. "Maybe," she said. "She did something wrong, and now she has to face it." Timmy nodded slow. He looked at Karen, all cuffed up and crying, and thought about all those times she'd yelled at him. "This is against the rules," she'd said. Turns out, she was the one breaking rules, big ones. The cops started walking her down the steps. Her knees wobbled again, and she almost fell, but they held her up. Her perfect porch didn't look so perfect now, not with her in handcuffs, sobbing like a baby. The tall cop opened the back door of the police car creak and helped her in. Karen kept yelling, even as they pushed her head down to fit. "This is a mistake. I'll sue you. I didn't do it." But the door shut thud and her voice got muffled. You could still hear her through the window, but it wasn't loud anymore. It was just sad. Timmy and Lisa stayed in the driveway, watching the car. The neighbors came out now, all the way out. Mr. Carter walked over to his fence. "Well, I'll be," he said, shaking his head. Mrs. Lopez stepped onto her lawn, her dog yipping again. "She stole money?" she asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. The kids on their bikes rode closer, laughing. "She's going to jail," they shouted. The cul-de-sac wasn't silent anymore, it was full of chatter and noise, like a party starting up. The tall cop got in the driver's seat, and the shorter one sat next to him. They didn't rush, they just started the car. Vroom. Karen's face pressed against the window, all wet with tears. She looked out at Timmy, then at Lisa, then at the neighbors. "Help me," she mouthed, but no one moved. No one wanted to. She'd been mean to everyone, not just Timmy. She'd yelled about trash cans and flowers and cars for years. Now they were watching her get what she deserved. Timmy hugged his ball tighter. "Mom, how'd they know?" he asked. Lisa smiled a little bigger. "They were already after her," she said. "She just made it easy for them." Timmy tilted his head. "So my ball didn't do anything?" Lisa laughed soft and happy. "Nope," she said. "Your ball just made her mad enough to mess up." Timmy grinned, just a little. He liked that. His thump hadn't gotten him in trouble, it had gotten Karen caught. The police car started to roll away, slow and steady. Karen's cries faded as it turned the corner. The neighbors kept talking, louder now. "She took HOA money," Mr. Carter said. "I paid $20 last month." Mrs. Lopez nodded. "Me too. For my dog's leash." The kids on their bikes cheered. "She's gone," they yelled. Timmy looked at his hoop, then at Lisa. "Can I play again?" he asked. Lisa ruffled his hair. "Go for it, kiddo," she said. Thump thump. The sound was back, and it felt good. So, that's the big reveal. Karen thought she was busting Timmy, but she busted herself. All that money she stole, all that hiding, she couldn't run anymore. The cops were waiting, and her own call brought them right to her. Wild, right? What do you think, ever seen someone get caught like that? Tell me below. This story's not over yet, so keep reading. Alright, friends, we're at the part where everything wraps up nice and neat. The big, wild mess with Karen Watkins is finally calming down, and it's time to see what happens next. The cops had just caught her handcuffs on, tears falling, and now they were taking her away. Let's dive in and see how it all ends. It's going to feel so good, like the happy ending to a movie you love. Ready? Here we go. The tall cop and the shorter cop were leading Karen to their police car. She wasn't yelling as much now, her voice was quieter, more like a whine. Her hands were stuck behind her back in those shiny silver cuffs, and she couldn't wiggle free, no matter how hard she tried. Her feet dragged a little on the ground, like she didn't want to go. And then thud, her clipboard fell. That big, important clipboard she always carried, the one she used to write her rules and boss everyone around. It hit the pavement with a sad little sound, like it knew she was done. It just lay there in the dirt by her perfect porch, papers fluttering a bit in the breeze. Karen didn't even look at it. She couldn't. She was too busy trying to stay on her feet as the cops walked her down the steps. Timmy Jackson and his mom, Lisa, were still in their driveway across the street. They'd watched the whole thing, Karen's arrest, her crying, everything. The neighbors were coming out now, too. They weren't hiding behind windows anymore, they were stepping right onto their lawns, staring with big eyes. Mr. Carter, the old guy with the gray beard, stood by his fence, his wet hose still dripping from when he dropped it. Mrs. Lopez walked out with her little dog, holding it tight like she needed something to hug. Even the kids on their bikes rolled closer, whispering to each other. Everyone wanted to see what happened to Karen, the HOA queen who'd been so mean for so long. Timmy looked down at his basketball. It was still in his hands, quiet for a minute. Then he gave it a slow bounce thump. Just one little bounce, soft and easy. A tiny grin crept onto his face, like a secret he couldn't hide. He wasn't scared anymore. Karen had tried to stop him, tried to call the cops on him, but it didn't work. She was the one in trouble now, not him. He bounced the ball again, thump, and looked up at the police car. Karen was inside, squirming in the back seat, her face all wet and red from crying. She didn't look like a queen anymore. She looked small and messy, like someone who'd lost everything. Lisa crossed her arms and watched, too. She stood tall next to Timmy, her curly hair blowing a little in the wind. She saw Karen wiggling in the car, trying to talk through the window, but no one could hear her now. Lisa smiled just a little and said something loud enough for everyone to hear. "Guess the disturbance wasn't my kid after all," she called out. Her voice was strong and clear, and it floated across the cul-de-sac like a victory cheer. Mr. Carter chuckled, a deep, rumbly sound. Mrs. Lopez nodded, her dog yipping once. The kids on their bikes laughed out loud. "Yeah," one shouted. "It was her all along." Lisa's words felt good, like a big "I told you so" to Karen, who'd been so sure she was right. The cops didn't wait around. The tall one shut the back door thud and walked to the driver's side. The shorter one got in next to him, and the car started up. Vroom. It rolled slow at first, tires crunching on the pavement, then picked up speed. Karen's face pressed against the window for a second, her eyes wide and wild, but then she was gone. The car turned the corner, and the sound faded away. No more yelling, no more crying, just quiet. Well, almost quiet. Timmy bounced his ball again, thump thump, and that little sound came back, soft and happy. The neighbors didn't go inside right away. They stayed out, talking to each other now. Mr. Carter walked over to Mrs. Lopez. "Can you believe it?" he said, shaking his head. "She stole all that money." Mrs. Lopez hugged her dog tighter. "I paid $10 for my flowers last year," she said. "She took it." The kids on their bikes rode in circles, laughing and shouting. "She's in jail now," one called. "No more rules," another yelled. The cul-de-sac felt different, like a big weight was gone. Everyone could breathe again, like the air was lighter and fresher without Karen's mean voice in it. Timmy looked at Lisa. "Mom, is she really gone?" he asked, his voice small but hopeful. Lisa ruffled his messy brown hair. "For now, buddy," she said. "She's got a lot to fix." Timmy nodded and bounced his ball some more. Thump thump. He liked that answer. He didn't have to worry about Karen stomping over anymore, snapping pictures of his hoop or yelling about rules. He could just play. He shot the ball at his little hoop swish and it went right in. His grin got bigger. "Yes," he whispered to himself. "Let's jump ahead a little." The next week rolled around, and things started to change in the neighborhood. The HOA, the group Karen used to boss around, had a meeting. Everyone showed up, even Timmy and Lisa. They all sat in Mr. Carter's backyard, on chairs and blankets, talking about what to do now that Karen was gone. "We need a new leader," Mr. Carter said, his voice loud so everyone could hear. "Someone nice this time." Mrs. Lopez raised her hand. "I vote for Tom," she said, pointing at a guy sitting near the back. Tom was a quiet man who lived 3 houses down from Timmy. He had a big smile and a little girl who liked to ride her scooter. He wasn't loud or mean like Karen, he was just nice. "Me?" Tom said, surprised. "I don't know much about rules." Mr. Carter laughed. "That's why you're perfect," he said. "We don't need more rules. We need someone fair." Everyone nodded, even the kids. They liked Tom. He didn't care about little things like basketball hoops or toys in yards. "Okay," Tom said, smiling. "I'll do it." And just like that, the HOA had a new leader, a good one. Timmy liked Tom a lot. The first day Tom was in charge, he walked over to Timmy's house. "Hey, kid," he said, waving. "Nice hoop you've got there." Timmy smiled, shy but happy. "Thanks," he said. Tom grinned back. "Keep playing," he said. "It's fine with me." Then he walked away, whistling a little tune. Timmy bounced his ball thump thump and felt safe. No more clipboard, no more yelling. Just him and his game. Karen, though. She wasn't doing so good. After the cops took her away, word got around fast. She was in big trouble, really big. She had to face jail time, maybe for months or even years, because of all that money she stole. Over $50,000. She'd taken it from the HOA fines money people paid for little mistakes and kept it for herself. She thought she could hide it, but the cops found out. They had proof papers, bank stuff, all of it. She couldn't dodge it anymore. On top of jail, she had to pay back every penny, plus extra fines. It was a pile of trouble she couldn't climb out of. Timmy didn't understand all the details, he was just 12. But Lisa explained it simple. She took money she wasn't supposed to, she told him one night at dinner. Now she has to give it back and stay in jail for a while. Timmy nodded, chewing his macaroni. "So she can't yell at me anymore?" he asked. Lisa laughed. "Nope," she said. "You're free, kiddo." Timmy smiled big then. Free. He liked that word. The neighborhood kept getting better. With Tom in charge, things felt easy. People didn't worry about silly rules anymore. Mr. Carter left his hose out one day, and no one cared. Mrs. Lopez's dog barked a little louder, and it was fine. The kids on their bikes rode wherever they wanted, and Tom just waved at them. The cul-de-sac wasn't perfect, it still had cracked sidewalks and old trees, but it was happy. Timmy went back to playing every day after school. Thump thump, thump thump. The sound echoed again, but this time, it didn't make anyone mad. It made them smile. One afternoon, Timmy was out there, dribbling like always. Lisa came outside with a glass of lemonade for him. "Having fun?" she asked, sitting on the porch steps. Timmy nodded, shooting the ball. Swish. "Yeah," he said. "It's quiet now." Lisa looked across the street at Karen's house. It was dark, no lights, no curtains moving. "Yeah," she said. "Quiet's nice." Timmy grinned and kept playing. Thump thump. The street felt lighter, like a big cloud had floated away. Everyone could breathe again, laugh again, live again. The neighbors started talking more, too. Mr. Carter and Mrs. Lopez became friends. They chat over the fence about flowers and dogs. The kids on their bikes made a little club, racing around the cul-de-sac. Even Tom stopped by sometimes, just to say hi. "Good shot, Timmy," he'd call when the ball went in. It was like the whole place woke up after Karen left. No more fear, no more fights, just people being nice. Karen's house stayed empty for a while. People said she wouldn't be back soon, not with all that jail time and money she owed. "Good riddance," Mr. Carter said one day, watering his plants. "She was a bully." Mrs. Lopez agreed. "Now we can relax," she said, petting her dog. Timmy heard them talking and bounced his ball a little harder. Thump thump. He didn't miss Karen, not one bit. Weeks turned into months, and Timmy kept playing. His shots got better, he could make 4 out of 5 now. Swish, swish, swish. Lisa watched him from the porch, proud and happy. "You're a pro, kiddo," she'd say. Timmy would grin and keep going. The cul-de-sac stayed peaceful, with Tom as the new HOA guy. No one complained about the thump-thump anymore. It was just part of the street now, like the birds or the wind. So, that's how it ended. Karen got caught, justice showed up, and Timmy got his game back. The cops took her away, her clipboard fell, and the neighborhood cheered quietly, but they cheered. Tom took over, and everything felt right again. Timmy's ball kept bouncing, and the air stayed light. What do you think? Pretty cool ending, huh? Have you ever seen a bully get what's coming to them? Tell me below. This story's done, but the fun's not over. Stick around for more. Hey there, friends. We've made it to the end of this wild story about Timmy, his basketball, and that mean old Karen. Everything's wrapped up now. Karen's gone, Timmy's playing again, and the neighborhood feels happy. But before we say goodbye, let's sit down for a minute and think about what happened. There's something big to learn here, something cool and important that can stick with us. I'm going to tell it to you in super easy words, like a secret just for us. Ready? Let's go. So here's the thing, sometimes the loudest people, the ones who yell the most and point fingers at everyone else, are the ones hiding the biggest messes. Think about Karen. She was always shouting, right? "Stop that noise," she'd yell at Timmy. "You're breaking the rules." She'd march around with her clipboard, acting like she was the boss of the whole cul-de-sac. She pointed at Timmy like he was the bad guy, like his thump-thump basketball was the worst thing ever. She was loud, so loud you could hear her from down the street. But guess what? All that yelling, all that pointing? It was hiding something. Karen had a secret, a big, messy secret. She was stealing money, sneaking it away, thinking no one would find out. She was the real troublemaker, not Timmy. Timmy, though. He didn't yell back. He didn't fight or argue or get mad. He's a quiet kid, remember? Shy and skinny, with his red sneakers and his basketball. When Karen shouted at him, he didn't shout back. He didn't run over and tell her off. He didn't even cry or give up. Nope. He just kept being himself. Thump thump. He kept bouncing his ball, day after day, even when she got louder and meaner. He didn't need to make a big fuss, he just stayed Timmy. And you know what? That was enough. The truth came out anyway. Karen's big mess, her stealing, her lies, it all spilled out like water from a tipped-over bucket. Timmy didn't have to do anything fancy. He just kept playing, and Karen tripped over her own tricks. That's pretty cool when you think about it. Karen was loud and pushy, but she couldn't stop the truth. Timmy was quiet and simple, and he won without even trying hard. Maybe that's a lesson for all of us, something we can carry in our pockets and remember. You don't always have to be the loudest one in the room to be right. You don't have to fight or yell or point fingers. Sometimes, you just keep doing your thing, whatever makes you happy, whatever feels like you, and the messes other people make will show up on their own. The Karens of the world? The ones who act big and bossy? They might trip over their own lies, just like Karen did. And when they do, you'll be standing there, still you, still okay. Let's picture it for a second. Imagine you're like Timmy. Maybe you've got something you love, like drawing pictures or riding your bike or singing songs. And maybe there's a Karen in your life, someone loud, someone who says, "Stop that. You're doing it wrong." They might yell or try to make you feel small. But what if you just keep going? What if you keep drawing, keep writing, keep singing? You don't have to yell back. You don't have to fight. You just stay you. And maybe, just maybe, that loud person's secrets, their messes, will come out someday. They'll trip, and you'll still be there, doing what you love. Doesn't that sound nice? Karen thought she was so smart, didn't she? She thought her clipboard and her rules made her the queen. She thought she could scare Timmy into stopping. She even called the cops, thinking she'd win. But her loud voice didn't save her. Her pointing finger didn't help her. All that noise she made? It just led the cops right to her door. And Timmy's quiet thump-thump? It kept going, even after she was gone. That's the funny thing, sometimes the quiet stuff is stronger than the loud stuff. Sometimes being yourself is the best way to beat the bullies. So what do you think about that? Have you ever seen someone like Karen get what's coming to them? Maybe a kid at school who's always bossing everyone around, telling you what to do. Or maybe a grown-up who acts like they're perfect but isn't. Did they ever mess up, and everyone found out? Did they trip over their own lies, like Karen did? I bet some of you have stories like that, times when the loud ones fell, and the quiet ones kept going. Tell me about it in the comments below. I want to hear what you've seen, what you think. It's fun to share, right? Let's talk about Timmy one more time. He's out there now, bouncing his ball in the driveway. Thump thump. The sun's shining, the birds are singing, and the cul-de-sac is peaceful. Karen's gone off to jail, facing her fines, and Timmy's free. He didn't have to change who he was. He didn't have to stop playing or hide his ball. He just kept being Timmy, and that was enough. The truth came out, justice showed up, and he got to keep his game. That's a happy ending, but it's more than that. It's a little light, a little idea that says you can be yourself, and good things can happen. Maybe you're quiet like Timmy. Maybe you're not the loudest kid in class or the one who talks the most. That's okay. You don't have to be. You can still be strong, still be cool, just by doing what you love. Or maybe you're loud sometimes, that's okay, too. But the lesson here is about staying true. Keep drawing your pictures, kicking your soccer ball, building your forts. Don't let the Karens stop you. They might yell, they might point, but they can't win forever. Their messes will catch up, and you'll still be standing. Let's imagine the cul-de-sac again. Picture Timmy out there, dribbling his ball. Thump thump. Lisa's on the porch, smiling at him. Mr. Carter's watering his plants, waving hello. Mrs. Lopez's dog is barking, but it's a happy bark. The kids on their bikes are racing around, laughing. It's a sunny day, and everything feels right. Karen's house is dark and empty, no more clipboard, no more rules. That's what happens when the loud ones fall. The quiet ones, the good ones, get to shine. And Timmy? He's shining bright, just by being himself. So here's a little challenge for you. Next time someone's loud and mean, like Karen, think about Timmy. Think about how he didn't give up. Think about how he kept bouncing his ball, even when she tried to stop him. You can do that, too. Whatever your thump is, whatever makes you happy, keep it going. Don't let the Karens of the world take it away. They might trip, they might fall, and you'll still be there, doing your thing. That's pretty powerful, isn't it? One more time, what do you think? Have you ever seen a loud person mess up and get caught? Maybe a bully at school or a bossy neighbor. Did they trip over their own lies, like Karen did. Drop your stories in the comments, I can't wait to read them. This story's over, but the fun doesn't have to stop. Keep being you, keep bouncing your ball, and let the Karens figure out their own messes. You've got this.